start recording. We start the podcast and it's already so good. All right. So here's the deal. Hi. You're like one of the best podcasts we ever had. People are all talking about it. And then I read the posts in the All In group coaching. And, I'm on the outskirts. I check it out. And, you're always such a truthful person and a truthful poster. But, you start this cancer treatment and I'm reading it and I'm like, I have so many questions. And then I was like, hey, will you answer my questions? You're like, yep, sure. In the middle of cancer treatment. But can you just first bring us up to speed a little bit on like the cancer stuff, the recovery stuff, like just like a little for those who, and like obviously everyone should listen to her first podcast because it's so good. There's so much to learn from it. But
Sure. So let's see. Recovery wise, I am little over 4 months, sugar-free, flour-free, cigarette-free. I picked up food when I was 9, and cigarettes when I was 10, and vodka when I was 10. So there you go. So that's where I am today. I'm in a second round of All In. Because what I realize is although I've been in recovery from a whole lot of things in and out for many years, I've never built a recovery strong enough to withstand life on life's terms. And life is going to happen.
With the food, you always
With
had.
the food.
So you have significant recovery off of substance, off of drugs and off of alcohol, but you have never had long-term recovery off of cigarettes and off of foods that sort of harm you.
Correct.
What made you decide to take another stab at recovery this time?
That's a great question. Basically, I went to the doctors. I was sick.
When was that? When did you find out you were sick?
I found out I was sick about a month before the first All In started.
So about like 5 months ago.
About 5 months ago. I could not have surgery to remove. So I have thyroid cancer, but I have a type that's called DTC. So it's not like we go in, we get it, everything's fantastic. They couldn't go in and get it because my A1C at the time was 10.8. And they don't give anesthesia to people who have A1Cs with 10.8 if they can possibly avoid it.
Is that right?
It's real dangerous.
Wow.
So
your health was preventing you from being able to get the surgery that you needed to heal yourself.
Exactly.
My A1C is an indicator of diabetes, so it probably was food related.
100%. So I've had 2 heart attacks. I've had diabetes for 34 years now, and all of it's type 2 diabetes. Everything, all my medical teams are like, you need to lose weight, you need to get gastric bypass, you need to lose weight, so on and so forth. So
what did it feel? What does it feel? What did it feel like when the doctors were saying, like when you're having these heart attacks? And I think the dialectic with you, that's so interesting too. And I know so many of our listeners are like bated breath because they relate to this, is, having this really rich recovery life with alcohol and drugs. And I think also some introduction to healing with food, and these doctors telling you, like, can you walk me through that? Like what was happening for you? Or was it just like blackout denial? Like, cause that was what I would be like. I'd be like, totally, I'm going to deal with it. Go home and like eat my granola,
It's total demoralization, because what I hear when they say, you have to do this, you have to lose weight, is I'm a failure. I'm a pig. I'm a failure. I've done this to myself. This is all my fault.
That's what you
and
heard
the shame and the shame spiral just envelops me, and I shut down and I do exactly what you said. I go home and I eat my potatoes and my pasta. And when I came to you, I met you in 2018,
Right.
and I was in the middle, or actually it was it was day one of recovery, in a recovery that would last about 2.5 years and then completely fall apart, and I would gain everything back, and it was yet another cycle. Um, but basically, when I came to you, Molly, I was done. Like,
But
I'd
I'm
given up.
so curious about it, right? Because we know from research that being scared doesn't promote long-term change.
Nope.
Knowing facts, so it's fear, force, and facts, right? Knowing facts doesn't promote long-term change, and being forced. And so I'm so curious. So it makes sense to me when these doctors are like, you need to lose weight, because that's actually not that I'm a health at any size person, but that's actually not entirely accurate, right? Like the losing the weight would be the outcome of the behavioral change that would benefit your A1C levels, that would allow for, I mean, that's what's true. Doctors are in a rush, and therefore make us go home and want to like kill ourselves, but whatever. And
For sure.
but I guess I'm so curious about, and we know this from the last podcast, but like I'm curious because I know somewhere you got a ray of hope to come do something, but my curiosity is also about how you're continuing to do it. So how did it come to pass that you're like, was it just fear? I mean, was it fear?
It wasn't. That's the whole thing. I was so depressed about it because I knew that fear wasn't going to sober me up. Like, it wasn't like the doctor was going to say something and I was going to be like, this time, I'm like, I knew. And that's why I came to you so completely hopeless, because I was like, the first heart attack didn't do it. Second
Right.
heart attack didn't do it. Like,
And Felicia, I understand what you're saying. Like, I feel demoralized, but what was the dissonance like of having this long-term abstinence with substance and having this sort real struggle with food and, sorry, frankly, with cigarettes, which is an abstinence stuff? Like, you're one of the most self-aware people I know. And so I'm curious about, like, did you access it? Did you just like put it under the rug and like talk about it later? Were you talking to your power circle about this even before all these diagnoses?
so two things. First of all, I felt like a complete fraud in the fellowship that I was in, even though I just celebrated 28 years.
Right.
So it
But were
was
you
robbing me
expressing
of my
that, or was that
joy.
just like, were you like, were you saying that to your inner circle? Like, yeah, I got my time off these substances, but wow, am I killing
So
myself in another way? Or was it just like, go me? And then it was secret.
so I told my sponsor. So my
Right.
sponsor's known for a number of years, and my sponsor has long contended that if I didn't heal in my eating disorder, that I was eventually going to go out and it was going to lead me to a
Interesting.
relapse. She firmly
Interesting. And what did
believes
you
that.
say to her when she would say that to you?
You don't understand.
That's my call to worship also.
You don't understand. There is some
Clearly,
kicking you
right.
can't see under the table.
I knew
Um,
I loved you, but now I love you a little more. Me,
I
you don't understand is such, oh God, that really, yeah, namaste, you don't understand.
you don't understand, and you don't understand will kill me. That's the hill I'll die on, because she completely understands, whether it's debt or whether it's booze or whether it's food. The reality is, if I have a secret that I don't deal with, it's going to deal with me.
Well, what
And
do you think
so,
we're really saying? What do you think we're really saying when we're saying to someone who's trying to help us or highlight something for us, when we're saying you don't understand? What do you think? I'm trying to think what I'm really saying. What do you think you're really saying to her in that moment?
help
You
me,
are.
fix me,
No
fix
way.
me,
Fix me, fix
fix
me,
me,
fix me.
fix me. Because in that moment, I'm convinced it's an outside job and something outside has to happen, because I can't figure out internally what
Mm,
needs to shift. And what is so beautiful and brilliant about you, Molly, is you don't get caught up in the why, or you are able to sort of redirect, or you
mm.
were able to redirect me to sort of put me to a place where I could go inside and do the inside work. I just didn't, even with all the years and all the women I've sponsored and all
Right.
of the 12 steps and all the meditation. And that's why when I got to you, I was convicted this wasn't going to work. I wasn't even convinced. I was convicted because I knew the big book. I knew the
Right.
12 steps. I know. Like what are you going to teach me that I don't already know? It doesn't work.
I
It
think,
doesn't work.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's, I'm trying to think of my own, like that feels like such a shame response, right? Like, what are you good at? Like, that's sort of us self-rejecting. Like, there's such a deep and profound fear and a deep and profound fear of rejection that we're saying to the people closest to us, you don't understand. I think that's maybe what my you don't understand. I was thinking one word that came up for me in my you don't understand how, is hopeless.
Mm.
It's like, stop giving me these suggestions, lady. This never gonna work for me. Makes you want to cry. And
There's another one, Molly.
yeah.
Not worthy. I'm not worthy. Don't
Mm,
waste your time on me.
oh, I don't have that one, but I do understand. I can empathize. Yeah. I have the othering one. I have the one like the othering, like maybe this suggestion you're giving me to work on this works for other people, but I'm sicker. I have more trauma. I'm
Mhm.
more complicated.
I'm the sickest person in the room. Don't
I
you
I
understand?
really
I'm a
really
sex traffic survivor.
yeah,
You
when I
don't
started
understand.
sitting in circles, I just was othering myself for years. Like, I'm a therapist. You don't know. My stuff is more, and it's actually like the most simplistic spiritual principles are actually the ones that have healed me the most. It's a little the irony of Molly, but so anyway, so yeah, so she was saying that to you, and then you were pushing her away, basically. Like she was
I was
saying,
like,
right? You're like, so I'm
peace.
gonna have to find another sponsor, right?
Yeah, really. This was fun.
Good
It
to
was a
know
nice
you. Good,
run.
yeah. It's
It
been a
was a
good
good
10
run.
years. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and she really had a gentle hand with me and just kept redirecting me. And she's like, so what have you done? I'd called to talk about, what I've done and, the inventory I've done or the this I've done. And she's like, so what have you done with your eating disorder? Like, have you found
Wow.
a sponsor yet? Have you made a decision? She's like, I don't care what you do. I care
Wow.
that you do.
Wow.
And she took no position. I'm like, I don't care if you do 12 step. I don't
Right.
care, what you do, but you got to do something.
That's a brave
And
soul. That's a brave
yeah,
soul.
she doesn't care if I hate her. Like she cares more about saving my life than
Sure.
whether like we're buddies.
That's literally what I
And
train coaches to be like, especially with addictions, because you always have to be louder than the illness when you're a good coach, and not just people are just gonna not like you and fire you. I mean, I've been fired so many times. I was like, but that's okay. Here we are.
what's
So wait.
what's I'm sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
What's brilliant is my turning point was when you were talking, you came to our group for round one and you were talking about beginner's mind.
Mm.
And I am always like, but it's not going to work. And you were like, what if it does?
Mm.
And I
Oh,
was
that's
just
so
like,
smart. That's because you know what? That's me. Like, that's literally my story. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, you know what? That's so true because the simplest stuff really works. That's what I know to be true.
and I realized in that moment that it was the fear. I was more afraid that it was going to work than it wasn't going to work.
Hmm.
Because what happens if I recover? Then what happens? My identity is a trauma survivor. My identity is in the addiction. My identity is sugar and flour. Like what happens to my entire identity and my entire life if this actually does work?
Is your identity also caught up in being like a larger bodied person? Like, is that a thing? Like, I don't, is that for you?
For me, it's a big thing. I really struggle when people start to pay attention to my body
It's
shape.
unsafe. Yeah.
It becomes very unsafe, and my
Hmm.
body immediately is like, this is what we're going to do to get to safety. And you say
Right.
this all the time, my body wants me safe.
Yeah.
It doesn't care if safe equals well, it just cares safe is safe.
Right. So your
And
body's like,
that's a
let's go to
problem.
the cereal bar. People are starting to
Exactly.
look at you. So this is really a perfect opening to all the questions that I have, as per usual, Felicia. So you did succeed. Right. And you can listen to the other podcast. She was binging her brains out for the first like 2.5 weeks with like the camera off, which really like speaks to last week's podcast. Also, like everybody's path is really, really different. And then you like, I think your truest self is, you cross this line and you're like, great, I'm all in. Let me show you all in. And, but then and then you got well, and then you had to go and take this next step of getting well, which is getting the treatment for your cancer. And you've done all of that, Felicia, without
first of all,
doing anything of these old behaviors. And I want to know everything about it.
so first of all, my doctor's in love with you, my endocrinologist, because she's never seen a drop like this. So I went from an A1C of 10.8, and I was hoping to drop down to an 8.
Right.
I dropped down to a 6.7.
Wow, that's like a normal person's A1C. Normal A1C is about 6. Wow.
And
Felicia,
they were like,
for those being, isn't it crazy that people like are like, all foods are good foods? It's like, not when your A1C is talking. Like, what are you like? This is where I think the all foods are healthy foods model, like my head might explode on the podcast, and not everybody's watching it on YouTube. So we'll talk about something else. But like, isn't that bonkers that there's an intuitive eating model when this was literally killing you?
In 2007 and 2017, the sevens, I went to an IOP program in New York City. And they were intuitive eating based. And I spent more than $75,000 between the two stops there. One was 7 months long and one was 9 months long. And I was a failure. I felt like a failure because I couldn't get intuitive eating, and it was pitched. And intuitive eating may work for someone. It doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It works for a lot of people, but for those it doesn't work for, it profoundly doesn't work for them. And then we die. As you're talking about, can you imagine if you stayed and you didn't listen to that voice, you would literally be dead.
And they keep saying all foods are good and just moderation. And I was like, okay. And it just never worked out that way.
Yeah.
And I was going to be a well therapized corpse.
Right.
I've had 40 years of therapy.
Right.
And talk therapy couldn't do it.
Yep.
Nothing really worked for me. And so I went to the endocrinologist. We got down to the 6.7, and I'm like, okay, can I have the surgery? And she's like, no, there are other numbers that you still need to get down. This is great. This is a good start. It's only been 3 months. Like, we need another 3 months. What we're going to do is we're going to put you on so they put me on an oral daily steroid. Excuse me, no, they put me on an oral daily chemo.
Wow.
Which makes my brain very squishy.
What is it like? And what did it feel like to be going on chemotherapy and being in this program for your relationship with food? Like,
so it was definitely one of the reasons why I decided to do a second round and probably a third round. I need the support because I have different things coming up for me now, right? So
but no part of you is like, back to your sponsor, like no part of you is like, are you joking? Like, no, like I want to be in my bed and I don't want to post every day, and like I just want to eat what I want to eat. Like, that's how I would be.
And that's how I wake up every day. And I have things that I do every day to treat. I put things on Post-it notes, Molly. Like, every day I wake up, and I wake up like a 5-year-old who's like, are you kidding me? Like, I deserve the macaroni and cheese that they sent me. And I deserve this. And I've got to tell the story. I haven't told anyone.
Okay.
So
we like to be the breaking news here on You're Craving.
So my wonderful office sent me this beautiful basket from a place called Comfort Spoon, and it's great. And it was all these beautiful blankets and this little bottle. So the biggest problem I've had is it's feast or famine with me. And I've also suffered from anorexia and bulimia over the years. So those are places I can't play with either. And the chemo makes me vomit terribly.
Yeah.
And so they sent me, one of the things they sent me was this thing called Queasies. And I'm like, this is great. It's all sugar.
Yeah,
So I
of
can't
course.
touch it. And of course I look at it and I'm like, that's awesome. And look, I wake up angry every day, and I wake up every day. The most dangerous place in the world for me is it's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
I can't play on that playground. Other people can, and that's cool. If I sit on the unfair playground too long, I'll be in the pasta.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, it's like, nope, I don't want to post. So you know what I'm going to do? Opposite action says I'm going to post.
But break
I'm
that
gonna
down for me. You're making it sound, I used to have a therapist who worked for me. Who's like, Molly, you make it sound too easy. Like to me, I'm like, no, like
no.
there has to be, you're missing like 100,000 steps between I wake up and say, I am taking chemotherapy right now. I feel nauseous. Like, I am not posting in a group. That is stupid. Like how do you turn the mind to opposite? How do you do that?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, I was lucky enough, and I don't want to say lucky enough, but I was blessed enough to have people in the group. People check in on me all day long.
Oh, so
So
you've created some really
yeah,
um
strong
permanent like
power circles.
lines that pull you every morning. So you're not doing it alone.
I have strong power circles that if they
Oh,
haven't seen my post by a certain time, if they haven't seen my goats up on All In, if I haven't been in the group chat, everybody's like, "How you doing today? Where are you?"
wow.
So I don't,
Does
and
that
that's
annoy
for
you?
yes, sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, if one more person asks me where I am or how I am, I swear to
I
God,
am busy.
I am done. I'm like, I'm zig.
Right.
Yesterday's a perfect example. Yesterday is the day that we meet in our all in group. And I love you, Molly, but the last thing on this earth that I wanted to do was attend group, participate, and have my stupid camera on. I
Yeah, I
have
hear
been,
you. And I'm a
I,
lot.
well, but we love you.
I
And
know,
the thing
listen,
is,
I'm great. I'm just saying, like, if you're not feeling well, my energy's a lot.
and for 2 days, I have not been able to hold down food. I was in the emergency room earlier in the week for dehydration, and I have not been able to like stay awake for 2 days. I've been constantly falling asleep.
Mm.
And I'm like, I have cancer, damn it. And I can tell my coach that I'm not coming and I don't care if Polly's
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then and then a craving hit.
Mm.
And I wanted something that is going to kill me. And I sat down and I did an urge surf, a
What's that?
DBT urge
Just for
surf.
those listening, what's an urge surf?
Sure. So an urge surf is a DBT skill, an insight timer, which has a whole free library of cool stuff, has a bunch of DBT skills, and it's really a skill that takes you through stopping and
Mm.
following the accepts that you're going to have the urge and you're riding it like a surfboard. You're riding the wave.
It
I
takes the
was like,
heat out of it, right? It's really the heat is what makes us
yes,
the heat and the resistance is what makes us give in to an urge, but just
takes the
riding it
urgency
out.
out of it.
Yeah, taking the
Because
urgency out of it. Yeah.
I hit the urge like I'm gonna die if I don't have this.
Oh, I
You don't
mean,
understand, Molly. I'm
yes.
gonna die. I'm gonna
Oh,
die.
right. Like I need this right now.
I need this, and there's nothing that's gonna convince me. And then I sit down and I have so I've done a lot of plan ahead. So
Mhm.
cope ahead is like I know I'm gonna wake up like a 5-year-old. I know I'm gonna have urges, and I know I'm gonna be dysregulated and dysfunctional, and I'm just going to not have my right head or my wise mind on.
Mhm.
And so I've set up a bunch of things. So on my phone on Insight Timer, I have playlists, and those playlists are pre-made. I hit a little button. I don't
Mm.
have to like, oh, I don't want to go find it, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
I hit that.
So there's no decision fatigue when you wake up in the morning. And it also sounds like I'm like this too. Like I know I used to go to a 7:30 meeting every morning, spiritual meeting every morning. And someone would say when I'd walk in, how do you feel? And I'd say, I don't make decisions on how I feel until 8:31, until this meeting's over. And I think that's sort of what I'm hearing from you, that you're like, I know I don't I know the decision I'm going to make when I first wake up in the morning isn't consistent. I got to power wash all this junk off of me. And that's like no matter what decision that you've made. I mean, this is so brilliant. And then you're committed to it because you love yourself, or you're working towards loving yourself.
But that's what I learned in All In. I learned all of this of like, I don't wake up every morning feeling like I want to drink. I don't.
Right.
I am in a place of neutrality, and that neutrality, for the most part, stayed steady 24/7, 365. And there are things that I do, but this is different.
Yeah.
And I have to do something every single day, and I have to do a set of things. So to your point, I have set it up so it's Felicia proof. So I don't have to make decisions.
Yeah.
I started, one of the things that you got me to do without even knowing it was pre-plan my morning breakfast. My morning breakfast is in the refrigerator the night before, done and dusted, weighed, measured, and sitting in the fridge, waiting for me when I get up, when I'm deciding that I'm going to have 19 other things. And I open the door and I go, excuse my language, sorry.
Right. No, but you're like there. No, but listen, I mean, you're like I mean, there's so much research on willpower being this really finite 15-minute, emergency skill. And then there's just tons of research on decision fatigue. There's only so many decisions that our brain can take in a day. So you're like cutting both of those off at their knees with this great desire to get well. What I was thinking about when I was sort of internally prepping for our conversation was like, is the motivation for her to do this through cancer treatment motivated through fear or force? And it doesn't sound like it is. What do you think motivates you right now?
Those don't work for me. Like it I'm like, yeah, okay. So what? Because what I've seen through All In is people who have peace and a beautiful life.
Yeah.
And I talk to other people, and they have this big, beautiful life. And I haven't had a chance to really have this big, beautiful life without the food in the way. And I want that for myself. And so where All In brings me to, where abstinence brings me to, is dialectical abstinence, because I now understand the difference after yesterday, by the way, and why this is more successful.
Right.
Is I, for the first time in my 54 years of existence, I actually feel worthy, like that it's okay. And it's safe, and I'm worthy, and I can recover, and I can do this. And you give me that, and Amy gives me that, and Marcia gives me that. 30 billion people who I come into contact with, and I'm exaggerating the number, but all of these
But I bet it feels that way. It's like, right? I bet it's like 6 people and it feels like 6 million, which speaks to anybody struggling with a power circle. It doesn't have to be big. It has to be consistent,
What's beautiful about my power circle is and I urge anybody who's creating a power circle to create one that shows up even when you don't ask it to, especially when you don't ask it to.
Yeah.
They're like at the door going, hi, how are you? And you're like, oh, wonderful.
It's interesting. And so it sounds to me a little bit like what's motivating you right now is desire, which is like the best, right? And I wonder how you think you might have overcome, if we go back to the top of the hour, right? How you might have overcome this shame response of, you don't understand, like, leave me alone, I'll eat what I want. You don't understand eating disorders. You're my sponsor from a different space. Like, how did we get, if you could just encapsulate it? And so now when things are getting really hard, I mean, friends, you don't get to be in the private Facebook group, but like, if you read these posts, it would make you think, well, she has every right to quit. Like, that's what I read it. I'm like, I mean, I'll give her money. It's a non-refundable program, and I'll give her money back, like, And then the next day you're up there again being like, hey guys, so nauseous. Hey guys, hospital. And then like your day count off. And I'm curious if you feel like you could encapsulate, what do you think, how do you think you got from fear to desire? Like, how do you think you got from shame to desire?
Because there was something in what you said in that session on beginner's mind that dared to let me believe it was possible.
This
I didn't,
idea of like, well, what if it does work?
yeah, I didn't think it was possible. I came to you like convinced that I've done, I've done it all. I've had abstinence. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
Mm.
And I'm different and I'm special and I'm unique and I'm going to die. And there you go.
No,
And
because that's a
I
great
had
one though. Like
accepted that.
that illness thought of, I've had this for 2 years and I lost it. And there's no, that's a lot of people. And that's diet culture and really just in one big fell swoop. But so you just turned your mind and it worked kind of?
It's, I'm not trying to make it sound simple because it wasn't simple and it was really painful. Like day one of no sugar, no flour, I wanted to die.
Right.
I'm not exaggeration. The
No,
world got way too loud and I felt like I was drowning. And for the first 30 days, I felt like I was drowning and my head would pop up
Mm.
and I'd feel I just the only way I could describe it is I felt like I was in a constant state of drowning. But while I was drowning, I was also feeling something that I had never felt before, which is, I'd spent a lifetime living outside my own body.
Mm.
I wasn't, I was dissociative. I wasn't connected. I couldn't, I had all of these problems and I didn't realize that yes, it was going to get worse before it got better, but I immediately felt this hope. It
Mm.
was like this little carrot that was in front of my nose and it was like just one more step, just take the next step.
And
It was like a little,
maybe there is a miracle part. Like this is why you never stop. I mean, you are the story of why you never stop quitting. I mean, you are the story, right? And maybe there was a part of you that like didn't, for whatever reason, maybe we don't know, but for the first time you didn't push away that hope. You just kind of like let it sit with you.
I, for years in AA, I've told people don't quit before the miracle happens, right? But I had given up that belief and you made me believe and I was mad at you at first because I'm like, she's just getting my hopes up and
Right.
like there's
Right.
a crash and burn. And then I got diagnosed with cancer and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, okay, this was fun.
Yeah.
And I'm off to the local, fast food place because
Right.
I'm entitled. And the truth is life is going to happen. The good stuff and the bad stuff is going to happen and it's going to pass. And the reality is, as long as I'm breathing and I take another breath and I stay sugar and flour free, I have an opportunity to be a participant in my own life.
And
I don't
and
have
you're
to be a
seeing that,
victim.
right? That's not a concept to you. That's like an
No,
actual practice.
I've gone from victim to participant. Victimese was
Mhm.
my favorite language. And
Mhm.
now I get to like make choices, like actual choices. Now I can still make the wrong choice. I can pick the wrong guy. I can do the wrong thing. I can take the wrong job. But I'm an active participant.
Right.
I'm not so drugged on sugar and flour that I'm just like, hey, yeah, then
Right.
this next thing. And I get to show up in my life and this beginner's mind for me, what I had to lose was somebody who was 28 years clean and sober and other substances, was I had to forget all that.
Mhm.
I always thought I was going to build on that. This was for me my issue. I always thought that my food addiction recovery was going to be built up on
Mhm.
this other thing. And what I had to do was set that completely aside. Still very important. It's a big deal. It's great. I love it. I need that in my life, but I have to put that to the side. And this is an entirely different thing. And I kept saying to you, but Molly, it's not like this. And in 12 steps, and you were like, stop,
Mm,
just stop. Like I could not think my way into being sugar and flour free. I needed that beginner's mind talk to be like, okay, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to listen and I'm going to do everything they tell me.
well, in a
Everything.
way, and create a whole new experience of it, which,
And
you know,
create a whole new experience. And I don't know this recovery. I haven't experienced this recovery in this moment.
right.
I'm going to listen to these guys. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm just going to do what they say. And I said, okay, I didn't tell you this, but I was like, all right, I'll do this for 30 days and we'll
Yeah.
see what happens.
Oh, look, I love that. I love that. I love all of this. And so is it like my experience working with people, there's a day that it switches from feeling really punitive and really punishing into like something you want to protect. And maybe by the time they said, you know, you gotta take this chemo, you're like, okay, and I'll protect my little baby too.
Well, this was the funniest thing. So when you were talking about beginner's mind, that was when the switch flipped for me because you talked about protecting your recovery. And that's when I realized I protect my recovery from alcohol and drugs like nobody's business. I'm like a super ninja FBI agent. Like I'm like, what's in the food? What's in the, but I never did that in any part of my food addiction recovery. And now I'm like, what's in that? I look at the queasies.
Wow.
I could have very easily come to you and been like, Molly, I was so sick and I had
Yeah,
to
and I
take
had to take
this.
the
And
Queasy, and then I realized it had sugar in it, and and I would have been like, okay, that's
what am I gonna
your
say?
recovery, not mine, right?
Well, and that's the whole thing. And that's what I mean when I say I get to make choices good and bad today. And
Mm,
I get to own them.
that's
I
right.
could have very easily done a whole bunch of things with the queasies, played the cancer card, and got all the sympathy and all the
Right.
land. What I did was throw the queasies down. My kid was like, what the heck?
Right.
And I was like, I'm mad.
Mm,
And my oldest son has autism. And he's like, I don't understand. What do you mean? And I'm like, I want something and I can't have it right now.
mm,
And so, I went back to Google to try and find things that, don't have sugar. Because
yeah,
apparently the only thing in all the land that cures nausea from friggin', cancer treatment is sugar. And I'm like,
that's
that's
funny.
awesome.
It also causes cancer. What a tricky predicament
It's
we have.
hysterical. Not really.
Well, here we are. Here we are.
Not my kind of funny.
Um, you're wonderful. Thank you. I think there's so much to unpack here for people listening. And I do really abide by my story being one of them too. Like you literally never know which time is going to be the one that sticks. And I would have to say though, like, and maybe this is unpopular opinion over in the land of Felicia, but I think there are parts of your long recovery. And I think there's parts of even that 2 years that I'm sure you carried over into this and now are like a little bit more humble about it, and you get what this feels like now. And you're like, oh yeah. So I was out to dinner with some friends, pretty good friends that know me. I guess a couple didn't. And they were passing around the cake. And someone handed it to me. So I guess she didn't know me. And I said, no, I'm okay. And she, and then her eyes got big and I was like, oh my God, I haven't done this for so many years. And she's like, why aren't you eating the cake? And I said, oh, I don't eat sugar. And her eyes got big again. And then a friend of mine who also, and all of these people didn't drink that I was at this table with. And my friend next to me, who knows I don't eat sugar. And she said, but are you craving it? Like, don't you wish you could have it? And I said, no, I haven't had it for so many years. It doesn't. And she's like, but like, what do you do? And she literally, do you think of yourself as like 400 pounds when you're if you were to eat it? Do you think of it with like maggots on it? I'm like, no, I just haven't had it. And I think that to have it would really impact me in a negative way, having nothing to do with my weight. And it's just so out of alignment that it doesn't even occur to me. And I think that's from practice. And I think that's from other learnings. And I think like leaning into how neutral and having gratitude and I think you're a really grateful person for this. And I think that makes it easier when we're feeling like, wow, I can't believe I found a solution versus this is the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. Like, I'm never sitting at a table when they're serving dessert and being like, oh, my life sucks that I can't eat like everybody. I'm like, oh, it's not my food. Anyway, I love you so much. We're going to follow you. This is great. So helpful. Thank you for existing. And I'm wishing you, I send you love every day in my morning prayer, but I'll send you love live here. Love you. Love you. We love
Love
you,
you.
Felicia.
Thank you, Molly.